Hi, this is Steve Quayle for the QCast, February 3rd, 2017. And it seems like not hardly a day, if within 6 to 12 hours, I'm not being contacted from different people around the world concerning what is going on in Antarctica. Within the last hour, I'm recording this, and it's about just a little bit before 3 o'clock a.m. Mountain Standard Time. I've been talking to one of the world's foremost experts on the German escape to not only Argentina, Brazil, but also to Paraguay. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the different stories, obviously there are stories out there that Hitler escaped in a U-boat, that he escaped from pretty much Scandinavia through different means and methods. Well, I'm telling you this, that according to my expert, and he's recognized as one of the world's experts, and you won't see him on Hunting for Hitler, we're talking about the six-engine aircraft that the Third Reich possessed called the Ju-390s. And the Ju-390s, and I'm just making sure I get the specs, they had a distance of over 6,000 miles. It's stated that they were able to fly all the way to Johannesburg, South Africa, and back to Europe nonstop. But why this becomes very critical, there are eyewitnesses that absolutely saw the last Ju-390. Some people call it the V3. It had nothing to do with the V2 or the V rocket designation that Hitler was on. They actually watched it land in one of the Scandinavian countries. They saw Hitler, and then the fascinating thing was my source said that the aircraft was painted in Swiss blue. So in other words, it was camouflage to fool those who would be aircraft observers. Now, why this is so important at this time is all of the different information coming out of the Antarctica, and we've already detailed so much of this, and this is Friday again. We're talking about probably one of the best and most unusually hidden, covered up scenarios in the world. I've talked to different people, one person specifically, who spent pretty much the last 10 years of his life as a former Navy SEAL, training all the different bodyguards of some of the different countries, their elite forces. But he said one thing he shared with me is that whenever he would go into different offices, obviously to talk to the people that were in control of him, Mein Kampf was always pulled out. If it was in the middle of a bookcase like you see in the background of this broadcast, this QCast, it was pulled out. And he started noticing that. But it was only until all this news broke, primarily back in December 2015, going into January 2016, that it finally dawned on him. Now, why we're bringing this up to date even today, late last night, I was in communication with a gentleman that had been in the Antarctica as little as 10 days ago. But within the last 12 hours, I'm getting confirmation again on a lot of different events taking place. For instance, making the statement that most people don't realize that there are different countries that are by treaty represented in the Antarctica, each in their own specific sphere of research and influence. But what the military does, the U.S. military does, and obviously we know of all the underground bases, is they aren't required to report to anyone, nor should they. But the amount of secrecy that's going on right now would lead me, and I think it's leading a lot of you, to know this, that somebody is getting ready to make a major announcement. Now, what is being poised as where Hitler finally ended up, I'm going to deal with a little bit of a spiritual realm today, and what's critical is this, that Dr. Mengele, obviously after World War II, was in Argentina, was in Brazil, and was doing his best to not only learn how to twin was a precedent to learning how to clone. And to clone was a fabulous, if you will, almost scientific futurist view of the day that you would be able to take, in essence, make infinite amount of copies of the initial identity being put forth into duplicate, triplicate, quadruplicate identities. So many people in watching the news over the last probably 6, 7, 8 years have noticed that you always seem to see different versions of the same political figure. Now, as this QCast is being broadcast today, we're talking to different people beyond the realm of normal public awareness that are all coming in and saying, here's what I know, here's what I know. I've been trying to confirm the large presence of Russians in Antarctica. There are rumors, and according to 2 different sources, a lot of women are being brought into the Antarctic because it appears that somebody is getting ready and bracing for some pretty major devastation in the Northern Hemisphere. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've been watching Drudge. We've been seeing all the different postings. I've been posting all the stories on stevequayle.com of the bunkers for billionaires. The yachts are all in foreign ports. A lot of people are bailing out to New Zealand. A lot of people are buying $1 to $5 million condos in different bomb shelter communities around the world. And for the average guy, I just want to bring this up right now. On my website, stevequayle.com, over on the right side is my Ozark homestead, and the average person can find a place to live and have bunker space for a family of 4 for right around $60,000. I've been in the preparation business and have been one of the founders of it from 35 years ago. And I can tell you this, when you have a community where you can buy an actual, and these are small homes, but to have the bunker space, if you go out and try and build a bunker with the correct filtration, the correct shielding factor for radiation, the filtration system, the carbon monoxide exhalation, blast valves, entrance, blast doors, and everything, you can put a lot of money into them. Even a 4-person shelter can, depending on the sophistication and backup power, etc., can go into $100,000. But I want you to go again on Steve Quayle, my website, stevequayle.com, and look at my Ozark homestead. It's over on the right-hand side, and consider getting in contact with those folks. It's in Missouri. It's probably the best thought out, and I would say this, affordable shelter community in the United States. You know, somebody said, tell me everything you know. And my answer to those people is no way. You're not being faithful with what I have told you. But in this case, those that have ears to hear, eyes to see, will understand that the situation in this country is becoming more problematic. The headlines, the double crossing, the news today. Now, this all has to do with Antarctica. The news today of the rhinos, Republicans in name only, such as John McCain and the others who have been receiving money from George Soros, Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House. There's 6 different people that are very prominent Republicans that are coming to Lindsey Graham, that are being exposed, Mark Rubio, for taking money from the Soros Foundation. Now, let me share this. That's like a vampire. It's like Dracula offering to a kid, I'll give you a 5-pound Hershey's bar, which, by the way, that's not the best chocolate, in my opinion, but you just give me 4 pints of your blood. In essence, ladies and gentlemen, there's a price when you sell out your country. There's a price when you take money from someone who is absolutely bent on destroying the very nation that you are hired by its citizens to represent. Nothing of the truth will ever come out by the official sources. So what we have to do is we have to go to ancillary information. We have to go to people that know what's going on, and we have to get to that place where their testimony is being prompted by, I believe, the living God, by conscience, by guilt, or by sheer panic. There's obviously other motivations for people telling the truth. But in this day and age, with the preponderance of evidence of what truly is going on in the Antarctic, you got to understand, it's not what you see above ground. It's not even what you see in the ice flows, the ice fields, or the buildings above the ice. The different stations from different parts of Antarctica, the Norwegians at Troll, the McMurdo base, all of these different bases have a purpose, but the real purpose is under the ice. Not only the empire beneath the ice, but the world kingdoms of this world are responsible primarily to one entity. And whether you are a Christian or you're a non-believer or believe that none of this stuff is relevant, it's very relevant from the standpoint of this. If someone is trying to hide their presence and to control and dictate the future narrative to basically manipulate you, to be able to control you, to be able to deceive you, and ultimately to be able to destroy you, I'd say it becomes pretty problematic that this is an important subject matter. And simply stated, just as there seems to be an over attention by the West to Antarctica, in the Arctic, the Russians are doing a marvelous job of reestablishing all their bases. I believe they either have 4 nuclear icebreakers, and they're working on 2 more. 4 and 2 is 6, and these are fabulously big icebreakers. It's not like the ones you've seen in the old day newsreels. So there's an intense interest coming to both poles. And as the natural resources that are present in both the Arctic and Antarctic become a very interesting and lucrative financially, whether it's gas, oil exploration, whatever it's going to be, different forms or new minerals. In the Antarctic, everything seems to be centering around ancient energy fields, ancient energy sources. Years ago, and I started on talk radio 23 years ago as a host, doing 3 hours a day. Thank God that I was able to get Hawk to take that over. But we're now in a position that news breaks so fast, so furious, and so ominously, in my opinion, that it's important that these updates go out. We are hearing rumors today that, again, for the record, this is February 3rd, 2017, of massive intelligence presence by different nations and different intelligence agencies as if they're scouting the land to prepare for whoever's coming. Now, I would like to think that it's not a permanent issue, it's a visiting issue to get clued in. And one person sent me an email yesterday or the day before, and he said, Steve, have you noticed that Gog and Magog? He said, have you ever put that into perspective? Now, let me share my perspective on Gog and Magog. It's a little different. Obviously, I know Ezekiel. I know the prophecies. But there's a reason why the city of London chose Gog and Magog, 2 literal giants in history, especially in British Isle lore, to be the patron saints of that whole country within a country. And for those of you who don't understand, the city of London is like the Vatican City. It's its own country, has its own abilities, capabilities, etc. He said, have you considered that Gog and Magog could the armies coming from the north and the south and converging in the middle, could be those, if you will, hidden, and I never thought of this, he did, thank you, brother, I won't use your name, those hidden armies that are both under the ice in the Arctic and Antarctic. Remember, Admiral Byrd said that the flying craft could fly from one pole to the other in a matter of minutes. Well, every day we're having new revelations. We're having new confirmations. We're having new information. I made the statement, too. I want to clarify something. One guy said, Steve, I couldn't find on Google Maps anything that showed 9 satellite dishes in Antarctica. My answer to that is simply, and I asked my source, I said, how can that be covered up? He said, it's so simple. He said, remember, you're dealing with the most sophisticated electronics in the world, and then I might add, or out of the world. And so it's very easy to fake. You know, you've seen it. When a thief breaks into, let's say, a hallway, and the hallway's got a video camera, what they do is they take basically just background video, and they keep looping it and playing it. So anybody watching the video monitor just sees the same thing over and over. We've seen that again on specific areas in the Google Maps of different areas around the world. We've seen it on the moon. We've seen it in some of the planets, and we're definitely seeing it in a big and major way right now when there's a area of interest that needs to be blocked out, i.e. the Antarctica. So that was the answer that my engineer friend gave to me. And I shouldn't have called him so early in the morning. I forget that most people sleep. And I'm sorry. And by the way, if that ever happens, my apologies ahead of time. When I get a thought in my head, I am so determined to get to the bottom of the information source that I lose track of time. As a matter of fact, we were just setting up this podcast out at our studio, and all three of us, Tim Alberino, Carlos, and myself, none of us knew the date until one pulled out his iPhone and looked. As an aside, when you've got eyewitness testimony upon testimony upon testimony that these events have taken place that we're talking about in the Antarctica, when you have people who were the first Secretary of Defense was murdered, again, Forrestal thrown out the third-story Bethesda Naval Hospital window, when you get cover-up, cover-overs, and denials, and then the day comes when all those cover-ups, cover-overs, and denials no longer satisfy the curious or the inquiring mind, we all have got to answer or ask the question and hopefully get an answer. There's someone spinning or waiting to spin the history, the events that are taking place, and then you have to come up with, okay, why would they do this? Just as Jesus said that the love of money, not money, but the love of money is the root of all evil. Some of you have heard me say on talk radio over the years that obviously the control of money is control of all evil. It didn't seem to me that unusual that when the Pentagon and the Secretary of Defense, Rumsfeld, I think they were trying to account for, $16 trillion that had disappeared? 16 trillion with a T? Oh, and by the way, how much is our national debt today? Officially 20 trillion? My estimate, and guys who are smarter than I am, are saying the true debt of the United States and future obligations and things that are off budget could be in the neighborhood of 200 trillion. Then take the derivative market. And I remember this. I remember when everyone was trying to calculate the derivative market exposure. That's basically IOUs upon IOUs upon we owe thems upon they owe us's. There's a great instantaneous definition of derivatives. But I said, and I remember saying this so many years ago, a lot of you who have followed me over the years would know, I said the derivatives issue is a $250 billion exposure, a $250 billion. Well, most people can't relate to $250 billion. Most people can't relate to $1 trillion. And $1 trillion is 1,000 billion, and obviously a quadrillion is 1,000 trillion. And we just were told that Bill Gates may be the first trillionaire. That's the most famous trillionaire, but there are plenty of trillionaires, and whether you're dealing with the Rothschild dynasty or the Rockefeller dynasty or some of the ancient Oriental dynasties that most people don't even know exist. So again, I want to say it's not what you see, it's what you don't see. It's not what's necessarily on top of the earth or on top of the ice. You got to go beneath that. And so it's my goal, and I would challenge every one of those of you that is in the know on this to make it known. Fascinating. I went into my store. I'm always in motion to check on my computer emails, and I got an email from an intercessor, and God has been showing her the giant doors, and she kept saying, Lord, Lord, what are these giant doors? Now, some of them were in the Seattle area, and today she sent me an email out of the blue just saying, in my time of prayer, she said, I couldn't escape it. The Lord kept saying to me multiple times, the Lord Jesus Christ, giants, giants, giants. Now, one of the things that's fascinating is that throughout the world, there are portals, there are gates, there are specific areas defined as stargates, defined as angel gates, defined as portals, time tunnels. There's so many different names for them. And if you remember back to the Norwegian spiral at the time Barack Obama, I think his first term of being the president, the amount of spirals associated with high energy beams kind of pulse throughout the world. And if you draw a spiral, kind of like, you'd think of a spiral galaxy, you'd always come to the same conclusion that something is being sucked in. Well, a lot of other particles, or let's just say light, is being spun out. It's just like watching a drain, Coriolis effect. The purpose today of this podcast is to challenge those of you in the know. And please, obviously, my email's not the best way to get a hold of me. Go to a third party and tell them what you need. And for the record, I never ask anybody's name. All I look for is information that can validate other information that I don't make public. That goes back to my statement. It's important, and both L.A. Marzulli and I were talking about this, it's important that we don't get feedback loops on our own stuff. So the point is that as more and more people are coming forth, breaking on the scene. Look, again, you may not believe this, but understand the most powerful and the richest bankers of the world, the kings of the earth, and let's just go one step further, the kings of the world who dictate to the kings of the earth, or maybe I should say the kings off-world that dictate, it's all pointing to a massive revelation. It's all pointed to a massive decimation of normal thought patterns, understandings of history. And it's kind of like the old cartoons where the cartoon character's head is smashed between two symbols, and you see the head, first of all, it squishes, and then it opens up. What I'm trying to get across is that men's hearts will fail them for fear of looking after those things coming up on the earth. Over 23 years on talk radio, beyond the ridicule, beyond the scorn, beyond being called every name in the book, beyond being accused of everything you can be accused of, you can't get away from the fact that when we talk about these events, we're talking about something that's very critical, very important, and very timely. I'm going to look at some notes here just to make sure I don't leave anything out of this. Here's what my source said. He said, Steve, a big disclosure on the nature of the aliens, the secret, if you will, alive ancient rulers. He said this, they would have no problem streaming from, and high definition streaming, from the Antarctica. Because he's saying that the amount of power, the amount of electronic sophistication there is beyond what most people even know exist. Then on another sheet he sent to me, and I think this is kind of an interesting statement. Let me get to that. He said this. He said, when they were in Antarctica, here's what he said. One thing I can tell you, word for word, one thing I can tell you was that there was a massive spiritual attack on my and our team. 3 of us are Christians. We were not able to fly out due to unnaturally bad weather. And when we did, it was the most dangerous flight I've ever been on. By the way, this man is an engineer scientist who flies all over the world. And he said this, I have never prayed so much and so long. Only after fasting and praying and then praising God do we break through and we're able to fly to Troll, that's a Norwegian base, to fly back home. On this flight, it nearly went terribly wrong in so many ways. I was praying in the Spirit, praying in tongues the whole flight, as this was a huge spiritual presence I haven't felt before. You talk about God allowing the hidden to be exposed. This was the first trip ever when they did not, now listen to this. This is the first trip ever when they did not have the compulsory ceremony to Poseidon. Poseidon, also Neptune. And he said, and you can, by the way, go look at that Poseidon or Neptune crossing and ceremony on Wikipedia. I was praying and fasting as we crossed this line. It is a huge, very spiritual blinding you bring on yourself by allowing it. In other words, he's saying that up until this time, people actually have to go through somewhat of a spiritual and mystical and mythical initiation. And so you can look it up. It's called the ceremony of Poseidon, or it's also called the ceremony of Neptune. He said, I ran across many different, I'm going to hide this intentionally, intelligence people, and many people talking about interesting things. Well, obviously, some of those interesting things have got to kind of be kept under wraps for a while. But when you talk about interesting things, when you talk about unusual things, and when you talk about the events taking place down there, it's pointing again to, I think we're looking at a very quick release. The efforts being made by the globalists and Christians, pray for Donald Trump as you have never been before. I think one brother that called me, he said when he was praying about Trump's election, the Lord said, it's like landing on Normandy. You've landed on the beach. Now the war begins. And as you've seen, 14,000 Twitter calls for the President of the United States to be assassinated. You want to bet there'd be in civil war if that were the other way when Obama was running? Do you want to bet the MSM would be calling us racists, white supremacists, white devils, and every other epitaph? And I'm really not using the language they use to try and, bring about the controlled reaction. We are undergoing a civil war. We are in the midst of a financial day of reckoning. We are in the midst of watching God, and some people get so mad at this. I have fought more Christians in defending the previous administration, they say, than recognizing that you've got a man who's asking for prayer. You've got a man who is saying the most important 5 words and that thrills his heart is, I'm praying for you. You've got the name of Jesus Christ, which was trying to be absolutely eradicated off the face of the earth, being proclaimed once again on the airwaves. And whether that's important to you or not, it says this. Jesus said that his followers are the salt of the earth, that they're the city, that's a light that's set upon a city. And I don't care how dark it is, when your eyes are totally fixated on darkness, trying to just make out movement, and you see a light, you head to that light. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm hoping that you will see the lateness of the hour and pray for Donald Trump. Those of you who have wisdom to know what imprecatory prayer is and know how to lay hold of heaven in prayer and fasting and literally laying before the Lord, I'm asking you guys to pray that absolute stopping and revelation of George Soros. When I gave the word before God allows the United States to be destroyed by Russia and China, and by the way, in those days, 7, 8 years ago, whatever it was, there was no tension like there is now. Donald Trump was not on most people's radar screens. But when you get people who are supposedly knocking Trump at every chance they get, by the way, they call me a Trump chump. They accuse me of this and that and giving the guy a pass on his moral failures. I would like to take each one of those people that says that and take them out to a beach and under the power of Almighty God, kneel in the sand as Jesus did and write some things, okay? And I said to this, if it weren't for the Lord blotting out the numerous sins and failures in my own life, I said, God would have to start on a major beach. And I said, it wouldn't be writing in the sand. Each grain of sand would be, a transgression for which Jesus is capable of forgiving us. But take this warning seriously. I don't know anything unless I'm either told it, given by divine revelation, thrown together, a divine revelation following up, divine revelation, then getting a secondary witness and a third witness. But it's to basically get everyone prepared to fall in love with Jesus. When I woke up this morning, again, it's the 3rd of February, the scripture that just flooded my mind was that Jesus endured the cross for the joy that was set before him. And Jesus knew his victory. My prayer for every Christian watching this and every non-Christian is make your heart right, get right, because you can look at science fiction movies or monster movies or whatever, or hideous, grotesque tattoos, imagery, Satanry, but we're at the lateness of the hour, ladies and gentlemen, and I just want to thank you all for tuning in today to this latest update of the QCast. Pray imprecatory prayer against all those that want President Trump taken out, and pray that God will intervene and stop George Soros and all of his funded plans, and that even the people in our government, look, the tree is known by the fruit it bears. Unfortunately, we got some really evil trees producing really evil fruit in the Senate, in the Congress, in the State Department, and the whole thing, Hollywood and well, let's call it DC Wood, and all of the different things that have been being revealed to us through WikiLeaks. We've got a lot of stuff coming our way. I hope that maybe by Sunday, I'll try and update these. I said every day I can't do it every day, just too much stuff, but I'll try and do them at least every day or every other day. Thank you so much. God bless you on the weekend, and pray as your life, your future, and your entire family's heritage is on the line, because that's exactly what we're up against. We've been given a glorious, glorious timeout intermission. That's offensive to most Christians. Of course, the Christians that are offended at that, or claimants to Christianity, they didn't really speak out much about when the Christian brothers, our sisters were being slaughtered, or even the fact that 15 Christian women were raped because they converted, or all the horrific. And we get a president like Donald Trump that talks about the beheading and the drownings and all the brutality associated with radical Islamic terrorists, and everybody like heads for the hills and won't address it. You're watching right now Europe be destroyed before your very eyes. You're watching the end of the EU. It cannot, listen, the house is divided against itself. And those who are behind the scenes, remember, they answer to Lucifer, and everything related to that which God created, that was good, and that which God has ordained for nations, every boundary is being torn down. So the order out of chaos is the order of the day. God bless you. May the Spirit of the living God grant you wisdom, understanding, victory, and discernment like nothing you've ever known before, because there's been nothing like all these events converging like any of us have ever seen before. And it'll be by the grace of God, the power of the blood of Jesus Christ, and our being obedient to that which we know that's going to get us through. And listen, being a tough guy may be one thing, but the smallest germ can take down the biggest guy.
Why are political and religious world leaders taking secret trips to Antarctica? Who or what are they going down there to see? Are they taking orders from someone or something? Is there something down there that they are hiding? Find out in author and researcher Stephen Quayle's newest book, Empire Beneath the Ice: How the Nazis Won World War II. In this book, you will discover how suppressed evidence proves Adolf Hitler did not die before Germany's surrender, and how he eluded capture. How Nazi SS, scientists, soldiers, and Hitler escaped and went on to create colonies across the globe, where they have continued their monstrous research to this very day. Empire Beneath the Ice reveals how in 1947, Admiral Richard E. Byrd warned that the U.S. must adopt strategic measures to defend against an invasion by high-tech aircraft from the polar regions.
Admiral, an expedition to which I believe you're the advisor is now en route. What is that expedition doing?
Well, that's the icebreaker Etka.
and it's a reconnaissance expedition. It's going down to the South Pole area to make certain observations and to look for some bases.
Admiral Byrd notoriously stated that the time has ended when we were able to take refuge in our isolation and rely on the certainty that the distances, the oceans, and the poles were a guarantee of safety. In his research, Steve Quayle will show you how using advanced technology, Nazi saucers defeated the U.S. military long after World War II had ended. How significant portions of the NASA U.S. space program are in fact a gigantic hoax. How starting in the 1940s and continuing all the way through till today, UFOs have appeared globally and are still most likely flown by Nazi pilots. Empire Beneath the Ice documents how world leaders in government, manufacturing, the pharmaceutical industry, and financial markets helped Hitler attain power and are still currently facilitating the preservation of Nazi wealth. This book will show readers how the world is secretly being controlled by a malevolent shadow government and how entire populations are being surreptitiously brainwashed. Steve Quayle documents how ancient stargates have been duplicated and are opening portals into spiritually demonic universes, and will show you how those who control our planet are laying the groundwork for a takeover by a dictator who can be biblically described as the Antichrist.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, and we will be.
Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth.
Empire Beneath the Ice exposes the dangers our world faces today and arms you with the tools you will need to protect your family and survive these unspeakable secret evils. Don't wait until it's too late. Visit stevequayle.com to get your copy today.